There is a particular comfort in the story of the late bloomer, the person who arrives at their destination not in the first chapter of their life, but somewhere in the middle, or even near the end, carrying with them everything the long road has accumulated and deploying it with the specific authority of someone for whom the arrival is not a beginning, but a fulfillment. The entertainment industry, which worships youth with the dedication of a religion, does not often tell this story. It prefers the discovery narrative, the young, the fresh, the unspoiled. The person who has been living for 60 years before the camera finds them is not the story the industry knows how to sell. Sidney Greenstreet sold it anyway, in 8 years, starting at 61. William Sidney Greenstreet was born on December 27, 1879, in Sandwich, Kent, England, the son of a leather merchant who had no connection to the performing arts, and who produced, in Sydney, a child who found his way to the stage through the indirect road of a man who has tried other things first and found them insufficient. He came to acting in his early 20s, after a period of tea planting in Ceylon, which is the kind of biographical detail that belongs in a novel, and that was simply for Greenstreet, an episode in the long, various life that preceded the career for which he is remembered. He spent 4 decades on the stage, not the glamorous stage, not Broadway in its golden years, or the West End at its most prestigious, though he worked both, but the working stage, the repertory companies, and the touring productions, and the long accumulation of craft that only decades of continuous performance can build. He played everything. He played Shakespeare and Shaw, and the classical repertoire, and the popular entertainments, and the obscure pieces that theater companies mounted for the audiences that attended them. And he brought to each of them the technical range and the physical authority of a man who had been learning how to inhabit a character for 40 years. He was large, nearly 300 pounds by the time Hollywood found him, with the specific physical presence of a large man who has made peace with his size and who uses it not as an apology, but as an instrument, who understands that the body the audience sees is communicating before the mouth opens, and who has calibrated what the body communicates with the precision of a craftsman. He moved with unexpected lightness for his size, in the way of large men who are physically aware and who have spent years performing in spaces that required physical control. And the voice, a high-pitched, almost incongruously light instrument for so large a body, which he deployed with the specific menace of a man who understands that the most frightening sound is not the deep growl, but the gentle chuckle, the laugh that contains no warmth, the pleasantry that is also a threat. John Huston directed The Maltese Falcon in 1941, and he cast Greenstreet as Caspar Gutmann, the fat man, the obsessive collector, the man who has spent 17 years pursuing the jeweled falcon and who will do anything, kill anyone, to obtain it. And the performance that resulted was one of those convergences of actor and role that the cinema produces rarely, and that remains, decades later, the definitive version of a type. Gutmann was not the villain who attacked with his fists. He was the villain who attacked with his mind, who manipulated and threatened and deceived with the smooth, civilized surface of a man who preferred to get what he wanted without the inconvenience of violence, though violence was always available as a final option. The intelligence was the menace. The pleasantness was the danger. He received an Academy Award nomination for the performance, his first film, his first nomination, at 61 years old. He did not win. He did not appear to require winning. He had arrived at Hollywood carrying 40 years of stagecraft and a specific, fully formed screen persona that required no development because it had been developed through those 40 years in theaters across 2 continents. And the arrival was not the beginning of his artistic life, but its final, most visible chapter. The partnership with Peter Lorre arrived almost immediately, They appeared together in The Maltese Falcon, and then in a series of films that became, for audiences of the 1940s, a reliable pleasure. The enormous Englishman and the small, bug-eyed Hungarian, the contrast between their physical types as visually compelling as the contrast between their performance styles, Greenstreet's courtly menace playing against Lorre's nervous, edgy volatility in ways that the screen found endlessly productive. They were not friends exactly. They were professionals who understood each other's work and who produced, in combination, something that neither produced alone. 8 films together, each one a version of the same dark, smoky, morally compromised world that the 1940s called film noir, and that Greenstreet, more than almost anyone, helped define. Casablanca in 1942 gave him Signor Ferrari, the rival to Humphrey Bogart's Rick, the man who runs the Blue Parrot and who deals in visas and refugees with the casual efficiency of someone for whom human need is a commodity like any other. The role was smaller than Gutman, but the presence was the same, enormous, still, radiating a specific quality of intelligence applied entirely to self-interest, dangerous in the way of people who have no sentiment to appeal to. He appeared in a film that became the most beloved Hollywood production of its era, and that has remained so, and his contribution to it was proportionally small and entirely memorable. Off the set, he was, by every account, the opposite of his screen persona. He gardened, he read. He was quiet and cultivated and genuinely kind, with the temperament of a man who had spent 40 years in the theater and who had learned, through that long apprenticeship, that the drama available offstage was neither as interesting nor as manageable as the drama available on it. He was private without being reclusive, convivial without being loud, at ease in his own company and in the company of the people he chose, which is the description of a man who has figured out how he wants to live and has arranged his life accordingly. He retired in 1949, 8 years after The Maltese Falcon, his health declining in ways that made the physical demands of filmmaking increasingly difficult to meet. He had appeared in 24 films in 8 years. He had been nominated for the Academy Award, had appeared in Casablanca, had created with Peter Lorre one of the most distinctive screen partnerships of the decade, and had demonstrated with every film he made that the 40 years on the stage had not been wasted time, but the preparation for everything that followed. He died on January 19, 1954, in Hollywood, California, at the age of 74. He had been retired for 5 years. The garden, presumably, was in good order. He proved what the entertainment industry consistently forgets and consistently needs to be reminded of: that talent is not the exclusive property of the young, that presence does not diminish with age, but can deepen, that the person who arrives at 61 carrying 40 years of craft is bringing something that no amount of youthful freshness can replicate. 8 years, 24 films, one of the most distinctive screen presences the cinema has ever produced. He started at 61. He finished at 69. The work he left behind has not aged a day.